What's going on YouTube? What we're going to be getting into today is going to be some hacks to use with your thumbnails to take them to that next level and make them just, that little bit extra. It's going to take your thumbnails from what is a run-of-the-mill, just a picture next to a title, and it's going to turn it into something that people are actually intrigued by. It's going to look a lot more professional, a lot cleaner, and it's really going to get your point across a lot better because people are going to be actually interested in the art that you have to offer them before they even look at your content. The thought process behind this is something along the lines of, if they put this much effort into their thumbnail, what are they going to be doing with their content? What sort of effort can we expect from their content? Probably something amazing. Yeah, I'm gonna click through on this. So let's get straight into it. What we're gonna do first off is we need to open up a new document. We're going to be using a 1920 by 1080 pixel canvas with a 72 pixel per inch resolution and an 8-bit RGB color mode. The background is going to be a nice, beautiful dark gray. I think the color is 0A0A0C. I like to have a dark canvas because I use a dark theme, and it makes it just easier for me to see what I'm working with. So the very first hack that I'm going to talk about is finding a background that you can blur effectively to keep the colors that you want. Okay, that's a very long way of saying choose the correct background. Choose the correct background for your thumbnail. So I like to see thumbnails that have a nice modeling of color. Okay, a nice little menagerie of color going on with it, like a lot of darks, a lot of lights, a lot of saturation, a lot of, bright colors, and a lot of very dull colors. I like to see a nice little, buffet of colors, I guess. I really like this picture when I'm making Fortnite thumbnails because it has all those elements. It has the darks on the edges, it has the purples, it has the blues, it has the greens, and then it has these oversaturated oranges and reds and yellows and whatnot. It has the bright blue and white here. It has the sky colors and the light coming through the buildings and whatnot. And it actually looks really nice as a wallpaper. It looks really cool. It's a nice piece of art that somebody did. But we're not going to be using it as a wallpaper. We're not going to be using that as a thumbnail background. We're going to be putting it into our document, resizing it appropriately, and then immediately we're going to be throwing an awesome blur on it. So if you don't know how to put a nice blur on this to where it looks like a model of color, you want to select your layer, come up here to filter at the top options panel, come down to blur, and then select Gaussian blur. Gaussian blur is the cleanest blur that there is for stuff like this. You can use box blur, you can use your radial blur, you can use all those other ones, sure, if you want to, but it has a different effect than this than what this Gaussian blur looks like. Now, when you're going for a blur, what you want to make sure of is that you can see some lines going on throughout the picture, but you don't really want to be able to distinguish whatever is happening in the picture. Okay, all I really want to know is that there are some oranges and yellows and reds right here. There are some blues and whites around here. This looks like there's some blues and purples. Maybe some greens in around here, and then dull colors sort of sparse throughout. That's what I'm really looking for in my background. I like to have a nice, like I always say, it's a nice mottling of color. It presents a nice canvas from which to just build off of. So that's going to be your first hack, is choose an appropriate background and then choose an appropriate blur to throw on top of it. And that's going to give you something clean to just build off of right from the get-go. Okay, the second thing, and this is the main thing that I really want to talk about, is excuse me, is you want to choose fonts for your thumbnail that are appropriate to the thumbnail. Okay? Choose fonts for your thumbnail that are appropriate to the thumbnail. I'm sure you have seen the people out there that use the same exact font for absolutely everything that they do, and they never change their font style. They never change anything about it. Every single thing on their thumbnail is always the same font. Now, I'm here to tell you that might be the dumbest thing that anybody's ever done. If you're going to be working with Fortnite, I'm just going to use Fortnite as an example because it's the big thing right now. So if you're making a Fortnite thumbnail, an excellent font to use would be, the link for it's going to be in the description, but it's called BADABOOM BB. BADABOOM BB. And what it looks like is this. Okay? What it looks like is this. We're going to up the size so you can actually see what's going on. It looks like this. It actually looks, it is the closest you can get to the Fortnite font without actually purchasing the Fortnite font. This is a free to use font, and it is, man, I'm going to say this is like 95, 96% exactly the same as the font that Fortnite uses. Okay? 95%, maybe 94, I don't know. Because theirs is it's not obliqued at all or anything like that. So this is actually a very clean font. It's a nice comic style font to use for a Fortnite thumbnail. It goes very well with the subject matter, and you know, it's nice and fun. And Fortnite is a nice fun game. Now this is a title, right? This is a title that we're going to be using, so we want the title to be in that font. But what about other information that we're going to be putting on there? We want other information to be not in the titling font. We want it to be in a completely different type of font. And this is known as exposition. Exposition text. Okay, so we have titling text, and then we have exposition text. So exposition text, like I said, is the information on your thumbnail. Oops, sort of messed that up a little bit. Is the information on your thumbnail that that isn't part of the title. It's not part of the title, so it doesn't need to be that nice fun font. It can be this pretty much informative font. And a very, very, very good one to use for this is the Generalissimo of all fonts. If someone doesn't use this font ever, they are a hack. This font is known as BEBAS NEUE. BEBAS NEUE. B-E-B-A-S. I have no idea how to accurately pronounce that, but that's how I say it. BEBAS NEUE. Okay? And that's good for exposition. Let's say you wanted someone to say, or to know that this is about Fortnite. Okay? This is about Fortnite. But what about Fortnite? What about Fortnite? We're going to talk about high kill solos. Okay, we want people to know that this is a Fortnite video, first and foremost. Fortnite video, and the things that you're going to be getting within this Fortnite video is going to be high kill solo rounds. Okay, perfect. Easy day. Easy day. And it looks good too. Something else to think about with fonts is going to be pairing your fonts correctly. Okay. There are serif fonts, there are sans serif fonts, there are script fonts, and then there's everything else, okay? 4 different types of fonts: serif, sans serif, script, and then everything else, all right? So if you're going to use something that is part of that everything else category, the comic style, the distorted style, just whatever, okay? Whatever you want to use. You want to use another font for your exposition that is not that style. I've already gone over it. But you want to use something for your exposition that is not that same style. So with comic style, sans serif here actually works very well. If you were using a serif style titling, a nice sans serif would work down here, or a nice serif, vice versa. It really depends. So just know how to pair your fonts correctly. I will be having a video coming out very shortly that goes in depth with how to pair fonts correctly for maximum like knowledge and you know, efficiency as far as you know, your look goes. So let's just move on. That gets really technical, so we're not going to get into it too much. The next hack that we're going to talk about is how to properly utilize your gradients for your fonts. So everyone knows that for titles, there is a gradient that everyone uses, and it's this gradient right here. This gradient. Now, what a lot of people do is they just leave it right like that. Okay, they put the gradient on there. They might throw a black or white stroke around it. They might throw a drop shadow on it, and that's it. That's it. The gradient's on there. It's good. It's a title. Yeah, technically that works. But I don't know. It just seems kind of bland for a gradient. Although it's bright and whatnot, it just seems bland to me. It just seems very bland. So what we're going to do is we're going to throw an inner glow on there. And before we actually hop into that, if you want to know the colors for this title gradient, the yellow on top is going to be quadruple F00 for the yellow. That's FFFF00. And then the orange is going to be double F6 Delta 00, FF6D00. And that's a nice, just solid, might be on the burnt orange side, but nice solid orange. What that does, it creates just this eye-catching gradient that YouTube viewers, creators, whatnot, they've all come to love this gradient. So, like I said, we're gonna put an inner glow into the gradient. What that's going to do is it's just gonna add a little bit of dimension. Okay, we zoom in slightly and we can see that you know, it's invisible on the top, but as we get down here to the orange, there's just like this little something about the gradient now that just makes it look more appealing. It just makes it look more appealing. When you're looking at this from, you know, the actual thumbnail size, this isn't the real thumbnail size, but this is closer. You can see, you can't really even tell that there's an inner glow put on that text anymore. It just looks nicer. It just looks cleaner. It doesn't look as gradient meh. Just looks a little bit, you know, like a little bit more effort was put into the thought process behind coloring this title. So the thing you want to keep in mind about your inner glow on a gradient, though, is the bigger the font, the bigger the glow. The smaller the font, the smaller the glow. So you can really play around with your glow on your title. Since your title is always going to be bigger than your exposition text, you can really play around with it and determine where you think it looks the best. So actually 15 pixels for a size with a 0 choke looks fantastic on that. Looks fantastic. Again, if we zoom out, you can see that it just looks, we're going to go all the way to full-on thumbnail size that you would see on YouTube on a desktop. And it just looks very good. It just looks very, very, very clean, very good. It's a good gradient. It's a very good gradient. So we're going to do the same thing to our exposition text too. But we're going to use a different gradient. So if we're going to use a titling gradient on our title, we want to use an exposition gradient on our exposition. Now an exposition gradient is not going to be the same thing as a title. It's going to be something subtle. Okay? Something very, very subtle. The gradient that I use for exposition all the time is a pure white 6F, okay, FFFFF for the white, pure white, and then a nice medium warm dark gray. It's gonna be 6 Charlie, 6 Charlie, 6 Charlie. That's a 666 Charlie. It's just like a, you know, there's nothing special about that color. It's just a medium dark gray. Okay, and it comes out to look something like this. That's what our exposition gradient starts looking like, is right here. We're going to do the same thing that we did with the gradient up here when we put the glow into it. And since we're going to use the top color, we're going to use the pure white for the inner glow. And as I said, the bigger the font, or the bigger the size of the font, the bigger the glow can be. So the smaller the font, the smaller the glow needs to be. Okay, so I'm going to go out on a limb and just eyeballing this. I'm going to say that this exposition font here, is about half the point size of this title font. So we're going to go half, maybe a little bit more than half of what that inner glow was. So if we had a 15 pixel glow on the title, we're going to do a 7 or an 8 pixel glow. I actually like 8 for our exposition. Okay, you're not going to notice it as much when we zoom out to our thumbnail size. Okay, you're not going to notice it very much, but you just know, I can tell, and maybe it's because I'm putting it on there, maybe it's because I look for things like this, but I can tell that that gradient just looks just a little nicer than if it was just a white to gray, or if it was just plain white. So that's something you can do with your gradients. Okay, the last thing that I really want to talk about, okay, this is another hack, is drop shadows. So I'm going to use the title for a drop shadow example. So what a lot of people do, okay, in order to make this pop just a little bit more, they do one of a few things. Actually, we're going to set this up here real quick. Just going to make a duplicate of that. I'm going to go ahead and make it invisible so I'm not worrying about it. And now we're going to go and we're going to mess around with this. So there's one thing that people do. One, they either put a stroke on there, okay, a nice solid stroke of about, let's say 5 pixels, yeah, a 5 pixel white stroke. They rasterize the layer, and then they go in there and they put another stroke, not white, but this time they're gonna put it black. Okay, and that makes it pop, but that's very generic. That's very, very generic. That's what you see every single thumbnail do. Every single thumbnail does that. Or they don't even worry about the black, and they just make it white. Just white, 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 and they make it a lot bigger. Or they just make it black and they make it a lot bigger. You can do that, sure, but like I said, that's just something that you see every single thumbnail do, and it just gets very, very repetitive. Okay, something else that people do is when they're going in to put a drop shadow, when they're going in to put a drop shadow on, I have big hands, so I mess up sometimes. They do something crazy, okay? They do something crazy, like this. This is a 0 distance, 60 spread, and 40 size shadow, and what that looks like is just it looks like a soft, huge stroke, a really soft and huge stroke, and I think it just looks boring. I think it looks bland. I think it looks like someone's not really trying to really work their font to the maximum capability that they have. So what I like to do is I like to play around with the drop shadow and actually use it how it's intended to make it pop. Make it pop off, make the whatever you're putting the drop shadow on, I like to make it pop off the page. So this actually looks pretty good right here. I have a 10 distance, 0 spread, and a 10 size shadow here. And if I zoom in, you can see that there's absolutely a shadow. There absolutely is a shadow there. 100%. There's no denying that there's a shadow that I use as drop shadow, but it's subtle enough to where you're not concerned with it. Subtle enough to where you're not concerned with it. However, the text itself is still popping off the page. Okay, still popping off the page. If we do the same thing for our exposition text, our text starts to look just very, very well thought out. Text starts to look very, very well thought out. So that's going to be our hacks for today, guys. Let's recap real quick. You want to have a nice choice of background, a good solid blur on that background. You want to use fonts that are correct and accurate to your thumbnail. You want to pair your fonts correctly, and then you want to utilize your gradients and your layer styles efficiently in order to make your text not boring. Okay, not boring. Next video will be about utilizing stock images and characters and whatnot, and the use of perspective in order to gain the illusion of distance and depth within your thumbnail. Again, it's going to take what we learned here today as far as text is concerned, and it's going to ratchet it up from 11 to 12, and it's going to give you so many more tools to work with. So thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, make sure you leave a like on here. Make sure you subscribe to the channel for more awesome content in the future. And I will see you guys next time. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful day. Peace.